Hello and welcome to Ukraine Today's Press Review. I'm Rahim Rahmatullah. In today's program, we'll bring you a roundup of some of the most incisive opinion appearing in the international media on Russia's confrontation with the West over the conflict in East Ukraine. We begin with some commentary on the G7 Leaders Summit in Germany on Sunday and Monday, where Ukraine was at the top of the agenda. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and US President Barack Obama led calls at the meeting for sanctions on Russia to stay in force until a peace deal is implemented in East Ukraine. But Larry Elliott, writing in The Guardian, doesn't think that's worth much. He believes the G7 is outdated and divided. He says the G7 is a moribund institution and has been for the past decade. As an instrument of the internationalism it was set up to pursue, it is hopeless. It should be scrapped. Tough words there from Mr. Elliott, who says that while the G7 has no shortage of global problems to solve, it lacks both the leader and the vision to get anything done. He writes, the G7 has plenty to talk about: Greece, Ukraine, the next set of development goals and how to finance them, climate change. What it does not have and has not had since 2010 is a common view about how to go about achieving any of these aims. So according to that view, a divided and leaderless international community which offers little comfort to Ukraine. But what can the country do on its own? Well, writing for the Associated Press, Stephen R. Hurst doesn't offer a great deal of hope. He argues that whilst the IMF has given Ukraine a passing grade so far on reforms following a multi-billion-dollar loan, in the end, Russian President Vladimir Putin holds the trump cards in Ukraine's drive to extract itself from Moscow's orbit. Hurst weighs up the positives and the negatives for the Ukrainian economy at the current moment. At the end of the day, he tells us, quote, the bad news: the IMF projected a 9% contraction in the Ukrainian economy this year, with inflation topping 46%. So some rather unencouraging numbers there for Ukraine, but is there any good news? Well, Leonid Bashidski, writing for Bloomberg, says at least that Western expertise on Russia following the Cold War isn't in as poor a state as has often been said. But he says that Western governments must stop being so passive. He writes, if Western leaders don't signal their willingness to normalize relations, for example, to cancel sanctions while freezing the conflict in eastern Ukraine, or to pressure Ukraine into a softer approach to reintegrating separatist-held territories, Putin can only make the conflict more acute. So a mixed picture there, but overall it has to be said that Ukraine appears somewhat isolated, with the international community, according to our commentators, variously unable or unwilling to engage Russia with the necessary force to make it change its actions in East Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine's efforts to reform itself remain ever challenging in a tough economic climate with 46% inflation. That's all we have time for today. Join us again tomorrow for another press review. In Kiev, this is Ukraine Today.